Okay, mic check one, two, three. Mic check one, two, three. Mic check one, two, three. Right, let's go and let's start. I mean, this is I think this should be the last time I am going to give this book a try, and then I'll move on to some other thing. In education, I was on fourth or something. Alright. As he put his hands to the doorknob, Winston saw that he had left the diary open on the table. Down with Big Brother was written all over in letters almost big enough to be legible across the room. It was an inconceivable, stupid thing to have done. But he realized even in his panic he had not wanted to smudge the creamy paper by shutting the book while the ink was wet. He drew in his breath and opened the door. Instantly a feeling flowed through him. A colorless, crushed-looking woman with wispy hair and face was standing outside. "Oh, comrade," she began on a. She began to dread a winning sort of voice. "I thought I heard you come in. You think you could come across and have a look at our kitchen sink?" She blocked away. It was Miss Parsons, the wife of neighbor on the same floor. As was avoid somewhat discontent by the party. You were supposed to call everyone comrade, but with some woman one used it instinctively. She was a woman of about 30, but looking much older. One had the impression that there were dust in the creases of her face. Winston followed her down the passage. These mature repair jobs were an almost daily irritation. Victory mansions were old flats built in 1930 or thereabouts and were falling to pieces. The plaster flaked constantly from ceiling and walls. The pipe burst in every hard frost. The roof leaked whenever there was snow. The heating system was usually running at half steam when it was not closed down altogether from motives of economy. Repairs except what whatever is now the heating system is still running itself. It was not closed down when some repairs except what you could do for yourself had to be sanctioned by remote committees, which were liable to hold up even the mending of a window pane for 2 years. Of course, it's only because Tom isn't home, said Mills Parsons vaguely. The Parsons flat was bigger than Instance and dignity in a different way. Everything had a better temperament look, as thought the place had just been visited by some large wild animal. Games. Everything had a everything had a better template on look as though the place had just been visited by some large violent animal. Games in Premier hockey stick, boxing gloves, a burst football and a pair of sweaty shorts turned inside out lay all over the floor and on the table there was a litter of dirty dishes and dog had exercise books. On the walls were scarlet banners of the youth leagues and spice and a full-size poster of Big Brother. There was the usual boiled cabbage smell common in the whole building, but it was shot through by a sharper rack of sweat. One knew this at the first sniff, thought it was hard to say. How was the sweat of some person not present on the moment in another room? Someone with a comb and a piece of paper and was trying to keep tune with the military music which had still issued from the telescreen. Here's the children and Mrs. Pearson casting a half apprehensive glance at the door. They didn't they haven't been out today, and of course she had a habit of breaking off her sentence in the middle. The kitchen sink was She had a habit of breaking off her sentences in the middle. The kitchen sink was fully nearly to the brim with filthy greenish water, which smelled worse than ever of cabbage. Winston kneeled down and examined an angle. He hated using his hands and hated bending down, which was always liable to start him coughing. Mrs. Pearson looked on helplessly. Of course, if Tom was home, he'd put it right in the moment. She said he loves anything like that. He's ever so good with his hands. Tom, his person was Winston's fellow employee at the Ministry of Truth. He was fetish but active man of paralyzing stupidity and a mass of immobile enthusiasm. One of those completely unquestioning devoted drudges on whom more even than on the thought it is the stability of the party. Even at 35 and he had just been unwilling evicted from the youth league and been graduating into the youth league, and he managed to stay on the twice for a year beyond the statutory age. At the ministry, he was employed in some subordinate post for which intelligence was not required, but on the other hand, he was leading figure on the sports committee and all the other committees engaged in organizing community hikes. And all the other committees engaged in organizing communities has spontaneous demonstrating saving campaigns and voluntary activities generally. He would inform you with quiet pride between whips of his pipe that he had put in an appearance at the community center every evening for the past 4 years. An overpowering smell of sweat, a sort of unconscious testimony unto the strenuous, strenuous of his life followed him about wherever he went and even remained behind him after he had gone. Have you got a spanner? And Winston, fitting with the nut on the angle joint, a spanner, said Mrs. Pearson, immediately becoming invertebrate. I don't know, I'm sure. Perhaps the children. There was trampling of boots and another blast on the com as the children charged into the living room. Mrs. Pearson brought the spanner. Winston let out the water and disgustedly removed the cloth of human hair After the ride, he cleaned the fingers with the best he could. Cold water from the tap and went back into the other room. Up with your hands, he had a savage voice. A handsome, top-looking boy of 9 had popped up behind the table and was menacing him with a toy automatic pistol. With his small sister, about two young, made the same gestures with a fragment of wood. Both of them were dressed in the blue shorts, gray shirts, and red handkerchiefs, which were the uniform of the spies. Winston raised his hands above his hands, but with an uneasy feeling. So vicious was the boy's demeanor that it was not altogether a game. You are traitor, yelled the boy. You are tough criminal, and you are Eurasian spy. I'll shoot you. Vaporize you, I'll send you to the cell. And suddenly there were both leaping around him, shouting traitor, and the tough criminals, the little intimidating her in every moment. It was somehow slightly frightening, like the gamboling of tiger cubs, which will soon grow up into man-eaters. There was sort of calculating ferocity in the boy's eye, a quite evident desire to hit or kick. Winston had a consciousness of being very nearly big enough to do so. It was a good job it was not a real pistol he was holding, Winston thought. Mrs. Pearson flitted nervously from Winston to the children and back again. In the better light of the living room, he noticed with the interest that there actually was dust in the creases of her face. They do get so noisy, she said. They're disappointed because they couldn't go to see the hanging. That's what it is. I'm too busy to take them, and Tom would back from work in time. Why can't we go and see the hanging? Wrote the boy. And you always want to see the hanging, want to see the hanging, chanted the little girl, still capering around. Some Eurasian prisoners guilty of war crimes were to be hanged in the park that evening. Winston remembered this happened about once a month and was a popular spectacle. Children always clamored to be taken to see it. He took his leave of Mrs. Pearson and made for the door, but he had not gone 6 steps down the passageway when something hit the back of his neck, an agonizingly painful blow. It was as though a red hot wire had been jabbed into him. He spun round just in time to see Mrs. Pearson dragging her son back into the doorway while the boy beggarly catapulted. Goldstein bellowed the boy as the door closed on him, but what most struck Vincent was the look of helpless fright on the woman's greyish face. Back in the flat, he stepped quickly past the telescreen and sat down at the table again, still rubbing his neck. The music from telescreen had stopped. Instead, a clear military voice was reading out with a sort of brutal realized description of the armaments of the new floating fortress, which had just been anchored between ice and the Faroe Islands. With those children, he thought that French women must have a life of terror. Another year, 2 year, and they would be watching her night and day for symptoms of orthodoxy. Nearly all children nowadays were horrible. What was most of such organizations at this point they were systematically turned into ungovernable little savages, and yet this produced them no tendency whatever to rebel against the discipline of the party. On the contrary, they adored the party and everything connected with it: the songs, the processions, the banners, the hiking, the drilling with dummy rifles, the yelling of slogans, the worship of Big Brother. It was all sort of glorious game. Them all their ferocity was turned outwards against the enemies of the state, against foreigners. And with good reasons, for hardly a week passed in which the Times did not carry a paragraph describing how some eavesdropping little sneak child hero was the phrase generally used, overheard some compromising remark and de-announced its parents to thought police. The sting of the catapult bullet had worn off. He picked up his pen half-heartedly, wondering that he could find something more to write in the diary. Suddenly, he began thinking of O'Brien again years ago. How long was it? 7 years. He had dreamed of doing a statement, not a command. He had walked on without pausing. What was curious was that at the time in the dream, the words had not made much impression on him. It was only later, while how long 7 years it might be, he had dreamed that he was walking through a pitch dark room and someone sitting to one side of him had said he as he passed, "We shall meet in the place where there is no darkness." It was very quietly, almost casually, a statement, not a command. He had walked on without pausing. What was curious was that at the time in the dream, the words had not made much impression on him. It was only later and by degrees that they had seemed to take on significance. He could not now remember whether it was before or after having the dream that he had seen O'Brien for the first time, nor could he remember when he had first identified the voice as O'Brien's. But at any rate, the identification existed. It was O'Brien who had spoken. Vincent had never been able to feel sure even after. That's it. I'm taking a break, I guess. I don't know. I'm not able to complete this book. Let's check. When was the last time I was reading it? I, sh- I should have definitely recorded the stream or the last time I was reading it. Okay, let's see. Oh yeah, 3 months ago and 4 months ago. Okay, 4 months ago, 5 months ago. So it has been 5 months, and I have not even read one complete whole book. So the point is like this is holding me back. I guess I'm not able to move on to another book. So my thought is like I'll just drop it right here. I'm dropping this. Okay, I tried. Okay, I tried, but yeah, I'm dropping it now. I'm not going to read it. Like not right now, absolutely. Not in tomorrow, not day after tomorrow, I think. So I'll just stop right here and move on something else, something that I am interested in. So I'll just stop it. 5 months, like at least one or two, I would have completed reading, right? So yeah, that's it. I'm going to end here. Bye.